This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant and Pest Geek Podcast for the Living the Wildlife podcast. Always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and or other control methods to manage pests. Wildlife Control Consultant, LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here. Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife. It's part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. Hey, glad to have you on board here. Hope you're having a good week, or you had a good week, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. As you know, we tend to publish every Friday, so we're really glad that you've decided to download this podcast today. Do take a few moments, if you would, to subscribe to the channel and also to join us on Facebook for our group, in our Pest Geek Podcast group. Join the revolution, as Franklin calls it, and we'd love to have you on board, ask questions, engage. We bring up issues and things that are going to be helpful for you and your business. Also, you could reach out to me. Email really is the best way. I know people try to get a hold of me through Facebook Messenger and things. It's really hard because sometimes your questions are complicated and you're asking for a simple answer, but sometimes it's not. There is no simple answer because things can get complicated. There's a lot of legal and risk and liability issues involved in the wildlife control field. So sometimes we're wanting simple answers. It's sort of like, as I tried to explain to someone who's in the pest control field, and you're asking, how do I get rid of cockroaches? Just give me the pesticide. Well, if you know anything about cockroaches, I don't know a lot about cockroaches, but I've done some reading in the area. It's not just something you just go and spray. If that's your answer, then if that's what you're looking for, it's like, give me a pill to make so I can lose weight. We haven't found one yet. So we have pills that can help, but we don't have the magic pill that just melts the pounds away and you can eat whatever you want, and however you want. Okay. So it is helpful if you contact me via email, so I have the ability to provide a longer, more detailed response. Of course, you can always hire me as a consultant, so I charge $50 an hour, so in 1 hour minimum. And so a lot of times things can occur very relatively quickly, so it's really your call. But definitely email is best. If it's really a brief question, you can certainly reach out to me on Messenger, but you have to really think about it, saying, is this really a simple question? And often it isn't. It's sort of like saying, what's the best trap? I don't know. What's the best truck? Depends on what you're using it for. So there's a lot. It's a lot more complicated. I'm not claiming wildlife control is rocket science. It's not. But there are some nuances, especially with some of the questions that can come across. So it really would help me a great deal. All right, enough of that. How do you get a hold of me? wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. And you can definitely reach out to me there. I'm pleased for those of you that have. So we've had a chance to chat a little bit via email. And love to get your feedback. If there are ideas for future shows, or perhaps you have a product or item that you'd like to market to the industry, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to do interviews with people who are influential within the industry or have products. It is fascinating to me how many people are shy about the interview. I think they must think I do gotcha journalism. I don't do gotcha journalism. But that means it's sort of like when you bring someone on the show and you ask him a bunch of difficult questions like who's the president of Kazakhstan or something, or what is the reproductive rate of bushy-tailed wood rats, things like that. No, we're interested in learning from your perspective about your product, and we don't do gotcha questions interviews. As anyone who knows who's been through the show, we don't do that. Nevertheless, you can again reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. All right, enough of the introductory materials. I thought, given that we're getting near the end of 2020, in some ways, I'm glad to see it in the rearview mirror. I mean, you're not supposed to wish your life away, as I'm told. But wow, it has not been a great year for me, to be sure. And so perhaps you've had a better year than I have. But certainly I am hoping that maybe the next year will be better. I certainly thought about that for 2020. 2019 was also 2020 was a very difficult year, and I was hoping 2021 would be better, and it was a little, but not anywhere near that. Had a lot of difficulties and challenges this year. So hopefully 2022 is going to be a better time even for you, even if you've had a great year. So I thought, it's traditional for people to look at the end of the year and sort of reflect backwards about what went well and what went poorly over the year. And I thought, as wildlife control operators, or PCOs, if you're listening as well, what are some things you probably should be planning to do? Because a lot of you will experience a little bit of a lull during the holidays, which is good. You want to spend some time with your family, recharge. But also you want to make sure you're taking that lull time to plan for the future so that you can make 2022 more profitable, less stress, improve your business, improve your life, and improve the services that you provide to your clients, because you do important work out there in the public. So I came up with about 10 things which I thought would be useful. I'm not sure we're going to get through all 10 of them on today's podcast, but I thought we would start and work our way through it. So I've tried to order them in terms of sort of an organization way. I can't say that necessarily number 1 is more important than number 10, for example, but I tried to have a flow in the organization, but take them sort of individually and see if they fit with what you want to do with your particular business. So number 1 that I had, again, just to have an order, and that is look over your books. And that's something I certainly didn't do when I was in business, and that was really a significant weakness when I was doing field work in wildlife control. And I want you to be sure that you don't make my mistake. It is really, really important to go over your books, and that you have an accounting program that allows you to get a little granular, in that you're looking at, where is your income coming from? Is it coming from trapping? Is it coming from repairs? Is it coming from predators like raccoons and skunks, carnivores? Or is it coming from birds? Perhaps you're dealing more with rodent activity. What about repairs or exclusion? Ask yourself the question, where is your money coming from? And that means not just simply what sources of revenue you're getting in terms of your services, but also think about the geographical location. If your computer program, your accounting software allows you to do that, what are the zip codes where you are generating the most amount of revenue? Also look at where's your money going? In other words, you can only improve your profitability in your business one of 2 ways. You can either increase your income, your sales, or you decrease your expenditures. What are you spending money on that's simply not pulling its weight? One of the things that we do sometimes in wildlife control is we buy our toys. You need to really think carefully about, are you buying something that's going to actually add economic value to your business? Or is it just simply something cool that you always wanted to have that you may only use once every 3 years? If you're using something only once every 3 years, then maybe you should just rent it or borrow it, or form an association with other wildlife control operators in your area and just sort of share the item. I think that's an area in our industry, because we are so small as a general rule, we're only 10% of the pest control industry. But there are some times where a specific tool, and I'm using the word tool broadly here, it could be a gun, it could be a piece of equipment, it could be a whole host of things that are really obscure. Let's say something like a starling trap. They call them the drop-down traps. Is that something you really want to have in your garage because they tend to be kind of big? And how often are you really going to use that, right? Or is it something you'd rather share with someone else, right? So those are some things to be thinking about. Look at your accounts receivable. Who owes you money? How long have they been owing you money? Do you need to go through small claims court? Do you need to hand it over to collections? Do you need to write it off? Because tax season, right? So you did the work, but do you have a way of flagging that client that you're never going to work for them again until you get paid? And perhaps next time you need to be getting paid more upfront. I mean, one of the ideas that I heard at a training conference, and I was like, yeah, God, that's a good idea. And they basically said, if you're doing a bird control job, you don't do anything until you get all the money needed to buy the materials to do the job. That should not come out of your pocket, because you could get stuck and it could really hurt you, because you can always lose your labor. Okay, but you shouldn't have to pay for inventory and lose your labor. Something to think about. Now you're going to evaluate your profitability on those various revenue streams. Where are you making, not just where you're getting the most amount of cash, but what has been the most profitable source of cash? In other words, what was the least amount of work for the highest amount of income? Was it doing a squirrel job on that 3-story house? Or was it the skunk job? Or was it the mole job? Or was it putting a chimney cap on? Where did you get your highest profitability, your highest profit ratio? And you want to be looking at the areas where you're getting a high profit margin and asking yourself, how can I expand the growth in that part of your business? Those types of activities that are not high profit margin, do you need to shuttle that off to your competition? Give them the busy work. That's certainly something you may want to think about. So this is going to take you some time, but it's going to be worthwhile time to ask yourself, because that's going to help guide the direction of the future of your company. So spent a lot of time on number 1, but I do think it's an important aspect. Talk to your accountant, but you need to be sure that you are collecting your data in a sufficiently granular way to help you make those business decisions in terms of where your company is going. Remember, you need to be running the business. The business shouldn't be running you. Create a marketing calendar. Now, this is based on your wildlife calendar. Now, I have a podcast on how to create your own wildlife calendar. I would encourage you to go back. You can visit my website. I have a list of all my shows, and that will be there, and you can listen to the show on creating your own wildlife calendar. But you need to create a marketing calendar. Why? Because you need to be anticipating. And I would put it right on the calendar, whatever calendar you use, put it right up there and say, when do you anticipate a shift for, maybe you're getting more skunk calls at that time of the year. Maybe you're getting more raccoon calls at that time of the year. Maybe this is when the mole calls start coming in, or whatever species and activities there are, because that's going to drive some of your advertising. So that when that, maybe June 1st, XYZ animal becomes a little bit more common in your area, or because of the birth pulse, do you have an ad coming out into your local neighborhood newspaper marketing that you provide those services? And you should also look at last year's sales. Again, you already did that in part 1. Activity 1, you looked at your books.
where were you getting your income? And then when were you getting your income? So if you have a category for raccoons for your sales, or maybe ground or carnivores, or however you're working your books, when did you see a spike in revenue from that animal or from that activity? And that is when you need to be looking at doing your marketing. You want to push the elements of your company that are getting growth, that you have high profitability, high margins. That's the part of your business you want to drive. That 80-20 principle, right? That 20% of your activity generates 80% of your revenue. You say, Stephen, how do I get more of that 20%? Exactly. That's what makes business hard. It needs to be dynamic. Now, sometimes you need to provide that 80% of services that aren't making you a lot of money simply because it's a lot. Sometimes it's a loss leader. Hopefully it's not a loss leader for you, but you're providing a well-rounded service. It may keep the lights on, it may keep the insurance paid, but your profit is generated from that 20%. That's the thing you want to really kind of drive home, and especially if you have workers, making sure that they are pushing those add-ons to get that, extract as much revenue, because you're providing an important service for your clients. They need your help to solve these wildlife problems. Okay, let's go on to number 3. Connect with your clients. These are your commercial clients, clients that are frequently going to call you on a repeated basis. Do you make sure they remember your name? I continuously tell wildlife control operators, we are not loved. I know I keep hearing stories, oh, my clients love me. I'm thinking, no, they really don't love you. There may be a few exceptions out there, but they really don't love you. I mean, who loves people that they're paying all the time, right? What they are is they tolerate you. They're glad to have you around, but they want you to be a distant memory. Because for a lot of people, killing animals just makes them feel bad and they don't want to think about it. Okay, so you need to reconnect with them. Do you have magnets that are put on their refrigerators or around their desks? Do you have ways that's going to help them remember who you are? You need to reconnect with your referral sources. Who's sending you business? Do you send them a thank you card? Do you send them a gift? Do you send them flowers? Do you send them a gift card? Do you help them remember that you're giving back to them? You're making it worth their while to refer to you and that you appreciate it. You know, there's a lot to be said for being grateful and being thankful. And I know it certainly hurt me at times where I've done things for people, and when it was my turn to maybe receive, there was just crickets, and it was very painful, and it's something that I have to. I mean, I'm struggling with that right now, but nevertheless, don't be that person. Your referral sources are important to you, and you need to nourish those, and you need to grow those. You need to develop those and make them feel important, because they are a life stream for your business. And these people, I've listed some here: realtors, animal control, police, fire, animal shelters. Some of you out in other communities may be able to think of other individuals, but trying to be kind of broad here, especially those of you in more smaller communities, police, fire, animal shelters. Those are going to be huge sources for you. Veterinarians may be another one. You may have competition who's referring work to you. You may say, well, why would they refer to work to you? Because it's not their service. Maybe they realize you're the bird guy, or you're the beaver guy, or you're the coyote guy, or whatever. You're the bat guy, and they don't want to get into that kind of business. Do you send them a thank you card, or do you refer business back to them for aspects that you don't do? I'm all in favor of good, healthy business competition, right? But sometimes our competition can also be an ally. I've heard some heartwarming stories in our industry where one business would have an injury, there'd be an accident, and they would be out of service, and the other wildlife control companies would handle their calls their clients without an attempt to steal them. I've heard of wildlife control companies that when they go on vacation, they refer their business to their competition. And when their competition goes on vacation, they reciprocate. That, in my opinion, is healthy competition. During the regular year, they're competing for business. They're competitors, but they're not enemies. And that is it can't happen everywhere. Sometimes egos get in the way. Sometimes people are just jerks. But to the extent that that's possible, that can be very helpful, because you may find that competitor can be helpful for you during those big jobs where you can form an alliance, do that big job, make a bunch of money, and then go back to your separate corners. But are you reconnecting with the people that refer business to you? That, I can't emphasize that enough. That is absolutely critical. And it's going to take time, but those are golden opportunities. Just in terms of my day job, I have a list of wildlife control operators within the state that I work in. And I'm amazed at how hard it is to get wildlife control operators to send me their information. You say, Stephen, do you charge for it? No. No charge. How do you vet these people? Nope. Don't vet them at all. All they have to do is tell me that they want to be on the list and send me their information. As I've said before on these podcasts, the heaviest thing in the world for a wildlife control operator to do is to push the send key. It must weigh 1,000,000 pounds because they just can't seem to push it. It's too heavy. So it totally blows my mind. So I have people that call me and look for referrals for wildlife control, and their name's not on the list. And it's fascinating. I can't figure it out. But nevertheless, don't let that be you. Get on those lists and make sure you get those referrals for your business. Number 4, consider new markets. Now, what do I mean by new markets? Now, a new market can be a service that you're providing. It can also be a new area that you're servicing. Should you expand? These are difficult questions. I want growth, growth, growth. Yes, growth is good as a rule. However, sometimes growing too fast or growing without proper preparation can harm your business, because you can spread out into activities that are not fully profitable enough, or it can detract from the quality of your service. You see, growth, in order to be valuable, needs to maintain the quality of your work at the core while expanding that quality into a new area. If you're not able to juggle all that, then the growth is harmful to your business. You can expand too fast, and then get so much negative blowback from clients because you didn't satisfy them properly. So you have to be careful about the decision to expand. And now, I'm not trying to be a nervous Nelly here on this. I'm just saying that growth, we want to push growth, and sometimes you need to take a risk, but it needs to be a prudent risk, and says, can I really service the people in this new neighborhood, for example? Is it within my service area? Can I really expect to expand to that point? Because you may find that you can't, or maybe you find that you can, but you need to be cautious about doing that. The same way about adding a new service. Do you have sufficient training and knowledge to do that job efficiently? Now, obviously, when you're starting a new service, you're not going to be as effective in it as if you were doing it for the past 5 years. I mean, clearly. My point here is do you know enough not to create a big mistake? Now, one of the things I tell people who are in wildlife controls are starting, they're like, I haven't trapped moles before, and I've learned a little bit about it. I'd like to add that onto my business. And I sometimes are just encourage them, then what you do is you lowball it. Sometimes you even do the job for free for people till you get the confidence you need. It's like, boy, Stephen, that's really expensive. Yes, but at least you're not going to necessarily, some clients are just jerks, but nevertheless, as a general rule, you're not going to piss your client off if you're not charging him anything. So if you're not finding this success, it takes the pressure off. Saying, look, you're not charging them, a $250 setup fee and then charging by the animal. And the person says, oh, you haven't caught anything, and I'm already out $250. And so this way you're able to get that experience, or you may just say, you know what, I'm just going to charge you whatever, XYZ, a really, really low ball rate to get that experience. And just make it sort of learn. Or maybe you're doing another job at their house. Maybe you're doing squirrels and you're like, hey, I see you have moles. Do you mind if I try to trap your moles? They may just say, yeah, go for it. Now you're not really costing you that much more. You're already there. You already have a contract with them, and you're just adding a service on to gain some experience. Another way you can do this is to, if you lack the confidence, is to find a wildlife control operator on the other end of your state. Maybe even go into a different state, someone who's not a direct competitor and not likely to be a direct competitor anytime new, and just say, hey, can I do a ride along with you? You find someone who does a lot of work at XYZ and said, I'd like to spend a couple days with you. Can I just hang out? That can be an inordinately powerful way to get to get some training. And I would certainly encourage that if that's something you want to do, because that's a powerful way of doing it. You're going to see it up close, personal, and be able to interview, do that ride along, and get that kind of material. So you say, well, how do you find someone like that? Well, you can find someone on that with the Pest Geek podcast would be certainly one way. You may belong to a particular professional association, a trade association, for example, and you may want to reach out to some of the members there, talk to the leadership of that association, and maybe they're going to be able to make that sort of connection. And so that can be another way. Of course, you could also go to training events. And so there's a lot of training material out in the market today. Certainly my company does training as well. And so you can certainly reach out to me, but there's a variety of competitors out there. And you can certainly do that. And there's different ways that you want to learn it. You can learn it online. You can learn it in person. You can go to a training workshop. You can go to a training presentation. And whatever, and they're all over the place, right? So there's no more excuse. Oh, I can't make it there. Look, there's things online. There you can drive things within drivable distance. I already told you about finding that competitor in the other end of the state or something. And then you can go to different conferences, maybe tied in with your vacation. So there really is no excuse anymore that why you can't get the kind of training you need to expand your business. Should you decide that this is something you need to do, and that it's appropriate for your particular business. So you can see why being self-employed isn't easy, right? You have to juggle a lot of different things. And so I have a lot of admiration for people that are self-employed. You got to respect the tenacity and the work necessary to do this job properly. All right, let's go to number 5, and that is now you need to review your marketing materials, especially if you're looking to expand your services. Have you included that into your new literature, right? Are you going to have marketing materials in terms of advertising to let people know, hey, I'm going to be doing XYZ that I didn't do before? Or maybe you want to emphasize that activity or behavior or the service that you provide that is the most profitable, and you want to really push that. Does that have primacy of place in your marketing materials? And so you need to do you need to maybe refresh your website a little bit? Is the website up to date? Does it have the latest information there? Do you need to update your photos? Is your photo from when you were 20 years old and now you're 40 and maybe you're 30 pounds heavier? And they're like, I don't know who you are at my door. That's not the person I saw on the website. Do you need to update some of that? Do you need a little refresh? And so do you need to add that material where you're adding that new service or maybe that new neighborhood that you're going to be adding? So do your marketing materials match the full breadth of the services you provide? And that's something. And then lastly, look at your answering message. Your answering message needs to reflect professionalism. It annoys me when I'm calling different contractors. I call them up and I get a hello. Person's full time, for crying out loud. Hello. And I'm like, is this XYZ, blah, blah, blah? Oh, yeah, that's me. No, come on. Don't do that. I mean, this is just, it just turns me off, and I would suspect it turns off a lot of your clients as well. And so then when you're charging, professional prices, they're like, well, who is this? So think about that. Think about your clothing. Think about your truck labeling. Do you need to do a little refresh there? Do you need to be sure? Do you need to make some repairs? Maybe some of your wrapping got a little damaged. Does it need a little tidying up? So think about the kind of image you're projecting, and that's going to be important for your marketing materials as well. So wanted to continue again from our last section. We dealt with the first 5 action items for the new year, and we can kind of review those quickly here. Look over your books, create a marketing calendar, reconnect with commercial clients and referral resources, consider new markets, and of course, review your marketing materials. So now we're going to step 6, which is establish a training plan. Now, you may not have any employees. Actually, the vast majority of wildlife control operators, of course, operate single-person companies. Now, they may have a family member helping them with phone calls or bookkeeping, but in terms of the day-to-day grind, it's going to be basically just you. Now, for those of you fortunate enough to have a larger operation, maybe you have multiple family members working for you or working with you, even if they're not quote-unquote on the payroll, you should be thinking about how can I make them better at their job, because there's an old phrase, it came out through the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People program, which is one of your tasks needs to be sharpening the sword, sharpening the blade. There's an old story that was part of Stephen Covey's book there, where he said, there was a man who was out chopping wood, and he was chopping wood, and someone says, well, why don't you take the time to sharpen your axe? And he said, I don't have time. I've got too much to do to sharpen my axe. I got to get these trees cut down. Now, when you listen to that, it sounds really, really silly, right? I mean, why wouldn't you spend a few moments sharpening your axe so you can cut the trees down faster? Well, I suspect that, however, when it comes to your own business, you have the same problem. And you need to ask yourself, what is it that you're doing in your job that's taking more time than what it should? And that's often an issue of training. Or what new activity do you want to learn? So it takes you, maybe you need to learn how to use Excel spreadsheets better. Maybe you need to understand how to use the software for your accounting program better. Maybe you need to develop a little bit better skills on modifying your website. Now, you don't have to do these activities, right? You can hire someone. It may be cheaper for you to hire someone, hire that expertise, and put your energy into something else. But even things that you're good at, asking yourself the question, how can I improve? What is it that I can offer? Either my personal development, professional development. How can I make myself work faster or better for myself and my clients and my family? That's why you need to be thinking about a training plan. If you have a spouse who's answering phone, maybe you want to go online and find something about how to maybe answer the phone better. Maybe there's certain techniques. Maybe there's a better record keeping system. Maybe there is a better way to transfer information from her or him out to the field staff. Whatever it is, you need to be thinking about what you want to learn and train for the following year. Now, I always recommend, if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you know that I recommend everyone to find an article or a book that stretches you a little bit. Something that's not necessarily tied to making money right now. Now, I know that's difficult. You're under a lot of time pressure. I get it. But you always want to be asking yourself the question, how are you going to compete with your competition if you're just simply learning the same old thing? If you're not learning something different, something outside of making money right now, how are you going to handle the competition? Because here's the thing, ideas come from strange areas. Sometimes you may be reading an article on the biology of a species, and you're like, I don't care, Stephen. It doesn't help me make money. How do you know that? How do you know that that journal article that you're reading, let's say you're reading something about gray squirrels and it's really arcane and specific, and all of a sudden you learn something about their behavior or about their diet that brings you a new idea for maybe a bait or a trapping technique or an exclusion method, whatever the case may be. Sometimes when you're in the field as a professional for any length of time, you understand that the training you're getting, that learning something new, is often at the marginal level. It takes a lot of work to go from a 90 to a 93 in terms of a grade. It doesn't take very much work to go from a 50 to a 70. That's really easy. But getting someone to go from an A minus to an A, like a 94, takes a lot of energy, exponential. And that's what you have to ask yourself, what kind of a professional do you want to be? Because oftentimes these are very marginal differences. So develop some sort of a training plan. If you've listened in my podcast, I've given you some resources. Get a new marketing book. Go online. Find something that's been... one of the ways you can find a good book is that when it goes into paperback. You don't need to read the latest and greatest book. With hardcovers are a lot more expensive, and you can often buy these books in paperback, because when they go to paperback, that means they've survived. They've gone into another printing, and meaning a lot of people liked it. So maybe there's something valuable there. You can learn more about sales. You can learn about biology. You can learn about making repairs. Maybe read a home inspection book, whatever the case may be. Maybe learn how to do a little bit more better vehicle maintenance, whatever the case may be. So think about what can help your company and move in that direction, and establish a training plan, not just for yourself, but also for those that work with you as well. All right. Evaluate your competition. How good are they? Now, how do you do this? Well, you can hire people that can be secret shoppers, and they can contact other companies and try to interview them. You can also ask your own clientele and ask them, they may tell you that they tried to hire someone else and maybe they fired them, or maybe they didn't return the phone call. But look at their advertising, visit their website. You may even want to have a call and ask them, what are they charging? What's their process? What do their trucks look like when you meet them? And so how do you compare with them? Are they in an area of service that you're not able to handle? Now, you don't want to get over analytical here, right? And so you don't want to spend so much time looking in the rearview mirror that you're forgetting about what's coming ahead. So the point is, you should always be looking to improve your company, so it doesn't matter what the competition does. But you do need to ask yourself, are they offering a service? And you can often do this through their advertising. Are they offering a service or a benefit or a warranty that you're not, that could be devastating to you? Do you pay attention? And again, you don't have to be watching them like a hawk all the time, but this is an opportunity for you to check out their website, check out their advertising materials, and see how they're doing. Maybe drive by their home base if they have a shop, and see how they're doing, how things look. Do they look like are they in good repair? Does it look like things are being kept up? Does it look like they're having financial trouble? And certainly you can interview your clients who will. Yeah, it's kind of creepy, but this is how you don't have to make it as, Gestapo-ish per se, but you do need to pay attention to what the competition is doing to make sure you're meeting the standards of the industry. Because if you're not, that can be a problem, maybe why your sales may be declining, or you may be getting hit by a truck on this issue that and you certainly don't want to have that particular problem. So check them out. Prep your truck. Yeah, prep your service vehicle. This is something you really need to look into. You want to start the year fresh. Of course, in many parts of the country, tree squirrels are going to start the mating season around late January. And I know when I was in business, that was certainly starting to get a busy time. So you want to use these quiet periods of time to make sure everything's ready to go. Prep your vehicle. How are the tires doing? Does the oil need to be changed? Get a full safety check for your vehicle when you bring it in for your oil. A lot of your oil change places certainly doing a lot more than just simply changing oils. How are your windshield wipers? When was the last time you checked those? How are the hoses? How's your battery? Batteries do wear out. You start getting a battery that's 5 or 6 years old, there could be a problem, especially if you're in cold weather, hot, although I'm told sometimes hot weather is more damaging to a battery than cold weather. But a lot of times frequent stops and starts can really drain a battery because you haven't driven a long enough time to recharge and re-energize that battery. So when was the last time? How's your coolant going? I tested my dad's a little while ago in his car. And so how are things going? Are you making sure everything's in order? And this may be an opportunity for you to also check your vehicle. How clean is it and that sort of thing, and is it in good repair? Here's where we get into your inventory. Yeah, check out your inventory. This is a great opportunity for you to really check things out, both on the business office side of things and as well as your field equipment. Take the time to get a full comprehensive inventory. That a good inventory is not only, it's tedious, I get it, yeah. But take the time to get a complete inventory. Why do you want that? Well, what happens if your building burns down? How do you prove to the insurance company that you had these losses? Well, one of the ways you do that is have a complete inventory. How many traps do you have? What kinds of traps do you have? What are the brand names? And so are there ways that you can simplify your equipment, particularly if you have workers underneath you? You want to make this not stress their brain as much as possible. You want to standardize. And if you don't believe me, you want to read a book called The E-Myth, which certainly was revolutionary for me in terms of my understanding of how business is supposed to work. Your goal for your company is to ultimately sell it. And if you don't believe that, and if you're not marketing and working on your business in such a way for you can sell it, then you basically have a job. You don't have a business. Sorry to tell it to you that way, but the reality is that you need to be thinking about your businesses. Will this help me sell my business? And inventory is important. So you want to do a full-on, complete inventory of all of your business equipment. That's your traps, your baits, your exclusion equipment. Then you want to think about office supplies. What kind of paper do you have? What kind of equipment? What kind of computers do you have? Your cell phones? What kind of vehicles do you have? And again, put this all into a massive spreadsheet, getting down to numbers. Why? And then you want to put that document not only on the hard drive of your computer, but also putting it up on the cloud, so that if your building burns down, you're still going to be able to get that information. Do you need to make new purchases for the new year? Do you need to order baits? Do you need to order new traps? Do you need to order a new ladder? Have you checked your ladder? How old is your ladder? Remember that ladders that are tied down on vehicles are constantly getting vibration. Over the hundreds of thousands of miles that you're driving all the time, it's subtly wearing out your ladder. Is your ladder exposed to weather like rain and salt and snow? That's going to degrade your ladder over time as well. Is your ladder in good shape? How are the rubbers on the bottom of the ladder? Are they in good repair? Do you need to replace your ladder's feet, so to speak? Do you need to get new rubber bumpers on your ladder when you're working on houses? Do you need to get some more standoffs? I used to use a corner standoff, which was really helpful. I could put it up on the roof itself, which gave me some stability, or if I needed to put it on the corner of a house, it was awesome. And it was one of the best things I ever purchased. Do you need to get a ladder stabilizer? How about your fall safety equipment? Have you fallen with it? How old is it? Is it in good repair? Do you need to replace it? Your respirators, your filters. How about if you use rodenticides or pesticides, are they expired or they need to be disposed of? Do you need to purchase new supplies? Are you going to try new rodenticides? Are there items that you need to make repairs on? Yeah, it can be a lot of work. Maybe you just need to organize your shop and make it more efficient. This is the things you want to do during your downtime so that when that spring crush comes, you're ready to go. And you have all the equipment that you're going to need. Because remember, you went back and you looked over your sales and you know when the crush has come. You know the kind of service jobs you're doing. There's a high likelihood you're going to be doing the same thing this year, if not more. Many businesses, they kind of, when they're going along, they start getting into a stride, and when they're doing well, they often grow their business because they're more confident, they're selling better, they get their name out there, people are calling. Sometimes you expand your service area because you're getting more efficient. So you need to be sure that you're not just making people wait. Oh, I'd love to put that chimney cap on for you, but I don't have the supply. And then people are like, well, I'll call you back later. You need to be sure you're ready to go to make these sales. Do you need to get screens and hardware cloth and tools, and make sure things are labeled well and organized well in your vehicles? Get that all cleared up. Also take the time to be sure you're backing up your computer. Do you have a backup program for your computer? That's part of your inventory. Do you need to organize your files better? That's part of inventory as well. And do you have a backup program? I think that if you don't have, I use a lot of portable drives myself, but I also have a fire safe designed for electronics. And I keep so many backups, I have a backup off site. So even if my whole house burns down and my electronic safe burns up. Now, the difference, if you're not familiar with electronic safes, fire safes, they're designed to protect equipment for about 20 minutes or so, depending on how much you want to spend, and didn't spend a lot, but it just keeps that equipment at a temperature of less than, I think, 100 degrees for like 20 minutes or so. You may say, well, Stephen, that's not very much. I can get a paper safe and it will do the same thing, but it's significantly cheaper. Yeah, because the walls are cheaper. Remember, what's the ignition point of paper? Well, it's like 451 degrees, where you can melt down your electronic equipment at a little over 100 degrees. So there's a significantly difference in terms of the thickness. And remember, if you're in an area where you have a fire department nearby, chances are they're going to be able to start cooling off that fire soon enough before your hard drives are all garbage, But if you're going to do that type of approach, I still would recommend you have a hard drive off site like I do, and you just back up regularly. If you don't want to have all that hassle, there's lots of programs on the internet where it'll automatically sync you to a cloud location. You just pay like a monthly fee, and it can do, hundreds of gigabytes, maybe getting into the terabyte area version of it. So then everything could burn up and you still have your data offline. It's also helpful in case you get a big virus or some malware in there where they take your computer hostage. You can say, well, we're just going to wipe the drive and start fresh because all of our material's backed up. Thank you very much. Okay, so that can also be a very powerful tool for you as well. So do that inventory. I know it's tedious, but definitely take the time to work on that. And then, I wanted to conclude with, if you're not planning a vacation for the coming year, could you take the time to do that? This is a time for you to look at your calendar and remember, is the business running you or are you running your business? So we talked earlier about the importance of your wildlife calendar. And you need to be looking at your wildlife calendar. Are there going to be some slow periods or slower periods? And for some of you, you've been in business long enough. The fact is, there is no slow period. It's basically the difference between full on and really full on, right? So you're busy all the time. Nevertheless, you need to make sure you take the opportunity to plan a vacation with your family. This is going to be very important with children, of course. You're probably going to have to do something during the summer, which can be a busy time for you as well. However, you need to make sure this is planned into your schedule and that you work accordingly to that. You need a time to refresh. You need a time to recharge. You need this rebonding period for your family. And you also need to look at the calendar in terms of what are the holidays that are going on. Are you going to work those holidays? Are your kids are going to be home? Are you going to do some 3-day weekends? Remember, one of the most important things you need to consider is that divorce is an extraordinarily devastating to a business because she'll get half unless you got a prenup, right? And so you want to be sure, and then you have all the emotional baggage involved with that as well, and it's just not a good out, and the devastation to your children. Don't believe any of this garbage. Oh, it's better for us to be happy for our kid. No, that's just a myth. The research is very clear on that. Whether you're a theist or not, children do not benefit from divorce. Okay, they just don't. Now, if you have a situation, well, my wife's trying to kill me, well, then in that case, the children would benefit from a divorce. Okay, however, that's pretty rare, right? And so, take the time to be sure that your marriage is strong. Take the time to make sure that your family is strong. Sometimes you want to be sure that you're not spending so much time building your empire that you forget your family. And a lot of people have become very successful business people and they've lost their family. And that was the price that they wanted to pay. And the reality is it's not worth the price. You need to decide what kind of a business you want to run. Are you going to run your business or is the business going to run you? You need to make that decision. It's not always about how much money can you pile on. If you're worried later on in life that you're now bailing your kid out of jail. Why? Because you weren't there for them. And that's something that you need to be thinking about. And that happens to people. Sometimes even the best parents in the world still have kids that go crazy. However, we all know that there are plenty of opportunities where kids go crazy. Why? Because they had disengaged parents. The parents were so busy with themselves they didn't put any time in their kids. Same thing happens with marriages. Marriages need to be stoked. They need to be maintained. And if you're not doing something for your spouse, then to make her feel special, you're doing it wrong. You need to be sure that you're telling her how valuable she is, how important she is, so that you can keep this marriage alive, and that you need to be maybe taking some time in your schedule to looking at doing some weekend dates where you're able to just get away, just the two of you, where you're not with the kids. I can tell you say, I don't have the time for that, I don't have the money for that. You're just not being creative enough, to be quite frank about it. You're just not. And you need to be looking at that. Do you have date nights? And you need to be thinking about, do you have family nights? Do you have date nights? Are you maintaining the vibrancy of your marriage? That's going to help yourself, because remember, you're not living to work, you're working to live. So keep that in mind. All right, well, let's kind of go over that list one more time for you, just to kind of start from the top. Number 1, look over your books. Number 2, create a marketing calendar. Number 3, reconnect with your commercial clients and your referral resources. Number 4, start thinking about new markets. Is there some new area where you need to get into? And again, a market can be a new service or a new area. And do you need to drop something? Review your marketing materials. That includes things, your vehicle, your brochures, your website. Establish a training plan. Evaluate your competition. Prep your truck. Make sure your truck is in good working order. Take your inventory. I know it's going to be a pain. And make sure you plan some time for yourself and your family to make sure that that's all in good order. Well, I hope you found those 10 tips helpful. My name is Stephen Vantassel, and you've been listening to Living the Wildlife podcast as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. And again, do take some time to reach out to me, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Love to hear your questions, ideas, comments about the show. You can also visit us on our Facebook page on the Pest Geek podcast family. Join the revolution. Join us there, and you can ask questions and, of course, comment there as well. And again, this is Living the Wildlife. Why do we call it Living the Wildlife? Well, because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everyone. Happy New Year.